Well, now you're moving creative intelligence into this sort of slightly psychedelic realm as well, using ketamine. How does that work?
The brain remains plastic until its last breath. And ketamine really empowers that. It stimulates neuroplasticity tremendously, as well as having antidepressant and anti-anxiety effects. So neuroplasticity was really documented, theorized in the 50s and documented in the 90s. And antidepressants stimulate neuroplasticity. And with mindfulness training, you can actually guide the rewiring of your sense of self. But you have to know what you're doing. So that's why I wrote the book, that what I do with my patients, I want it to be available to everyone. Recently, the research on ketamine and psychedelics and creativity has started to come forth as a clinical tool. So I've been working with my practice with ketamine, facilitating seriously traumatized people into very rapid recovery. I do brain training that works over a long period of time to rewire the sense of self. But with ketamine, what you do is unplug the me. So during a 1-hour session, you have an anxiety about, oh my God, what's happening? Where am I? Oh, am I dead? Am I dead? Wow, where's my body? And then the hallucinations and the sense of floating emerges as a point of view. I'm a conscious point of view. And the elation that comes with that when they come out of it, it's very common for people to say, wow, I'm not afraid of dying. This is all minutia. So it reframes, it gives you a glimpse into the not me, and I think Andy lives there a lot.
Do you think most of us spend most of our lives trapped in the narrative of me?
Yes, it's nature. We have to forage, we have to do, we have to interact. So that's the me, and then we remember, and the me that accrues over time changes with experience. So when you abandon the daydreaming of childhood into the doing, executive, all-American success, what happens is you lose contact with the body. And that's where the stress hormones really make you sick and kill you. And Andy died, I think, of post-traumatic stress from the assassination attempt. That's what he really needed treatment for. And I wish I'd had the skill and the wherewithal to say, Andy, come on, come and let's talk.
Do you think we're losing the art of reverie and daydream because we're so connected to our little black mirrors now, and it's all very distracting?
That's a very, very interesting point, because this has inserted itself into our imagination. We don't have to daydream. Somebody's doing it for us on TikTok or Instagram. So we become passive consumers of creativity and addicted to it. So being addicted to screens is probably a generational problem that we're going to start seeing. We're already seeing, adolescent suicide, anxiety, depression. It's going through the roof because the kids are just stuck in their screens. They don't look at each other. They don't ride together on the bus. They ride in parallel in their screen.
Do you think we're at a point of crisis in creative intelligence? As a child psychiatrist, would you say, how is all of this kind of modern world affecting the way in which children's brains and the ability to sort of form ideas through play? Well, I mean, what kind of generation do you see coming next?
Well, in COVID, I wrote an essay a month for a platform on all these reflections on creativity and resilience and survival and stress. And it's called Global Village Burnout: Creative Intelligence for Survival. And I don't know if any of you know who Marshall McLuhan was, but he was the Andy Warhol of social sciences in the 60s. And he developed the term the global village. And he really talked about television as shrinking the world into a living room or a village. And that has come more true than ever with social media.
Of course, yeah.
And so the book was really focused on child and adolescent development and screens. The dangers. AI is going to kick that up a notch, because I'm talking to other neuroscientists about starting a narrative called AEI, Artificial Emotional Intelligence. These machines must feel. We have the most advanced computer in the universe, And no AI is going to come close to what we can do because it doesn't feel. It's not alive. It doesn't have a fear of dying unless you program that in. So all the programmers are doing people. They're in this doing world, making a doing thing that they're losing their humanity. And that's why everybody's afraid. You know, AI could take over the world.
Well, yeah, I mean, in that paradigm, we will become kind of automatons at some point, right?
Well, no, we won't. What will happen is we will create a society where we're not needed, most of us, because machines will be doing it. We will need highly skilled people to interpret, use AI as a tool. We're already doing that in medicine. That's why we're able to create a COVID vaccine in a number of weeks. It'll get faster. So there's nothing wrong with doing things better and faster. But there is something wrong when you turn your sense of self over to a machine. And the book that I've devoted to that is the one right before Andy, SOS, Rewiring Your Sense of Self with Creative Intelligence Training and Psychedelic Medicine. Because I do see psychedelic medicine as a revolutionary step in medicine to embrace these ancient drugs that have been used for healing purposes around the world, that they do have this potential. People often use the side of spirituality as kind of non-scientific or otherworldly. I steer away from words like that I can't define and demonstrate how it works. But I'm interested in what happens in your brain when you have what you would call a spiritual experience, and making sense of that in your everyday life. It's one thing to take ketamine and get high at a rave and then, ooh, wow, what was all that? And then to go on doing the same old self-destructive life that you were before.
Maybe you could share the 6 R's with everyone, because I feel like that would be an interesting thing that everyone could take away from the conversation. It's a simple but very effective.
So when I shifted from using the term creative resilience to creative intelligence during COVID, I had patients coming back to me who had been discharged from the practice. Dr. Romero, what do I do? You know, I lost my job, the kids are at home, we're going crazy. So I had lots of return folks. And I found that what I was doing with them, which wasn't new, I was retraining them with things they'd stopped practicing. But I realized the thing that was really different was I was aware that they must reinvent themselves. The world that gave them a sense of who I am, I'm an executive, I'm a teacher, I'm a nurse, that was falling apart. And they needed to reinvent themselves from that core of authenticity and imagination. So I found myself training people to daydream. And so this is where I said, okay, let's break this down into a method. So first, what do? And a lot of this is already in the psychiatric modalities, particularly for PTSD. But let's remember the negative emotional experiences. Really remember them. Go back to that, and this is personal, go back to that first grade when you're in the toilet and Tommy King opens the door. I mean, that's a memory in my brain that is a hologram. The shock and the shame and the fear was, I mean, it's palpable. So those kinds of memories are strewn throughout our development and our unconscious. So if you work at remembering those things that hurt you most as a child or in an adult relationship, and there's the remembering, the first R. Then what do you do next? You reflect on it. Who am I now and who was I then? How am I different? How am I the same? How does that still affect me? And then you go to the third R, which is really part of a brain training exercise, distinguishing a stress script and a mindful script. And it's to declare, I'm not a victim. My body feels like a victim, but the self that I can be is creative and plastic. So you declare your emancipation, and now you're ready to go into reimagine. And this is where the daydreaming training and so forth goes on. But I train people to toggle back and forth on a daily basis. When riding the bus to work or something, look out the window and just let your mind wander. Don't, everybody's on their screens. I mean, you can't daydream when you're doing screens. So then once you come up with this, well, I think I'm going to learn this, or I'm going to stop that.
And Andy would have reimagined all of this without
All
any
this.
of it, and then created something incredible.
Exactly. He would come up with things that I think brought him closer and closer to his closet Catholic, challenging what was taboo as a child, and shows up with these brand new interpretations of his religious past.
And after the reimagination, what's that?
The reimagination, then you say, okay, reinvent. I have to become this person that I want to be. And then the final one is reconnect. Take it out, practice it, learn what works, what doesn't. And then
give it to the world.
Well, show up in it, be it. I tell my patients that your mind is the mother and the body is the child. And you need to re-parent your body because it has all these wounds from life. And as you turn your mindful attention to that body, its job is to feel, and you'll love it and say, I love you, I'm never going to abandon you, I'm always here, no matter what happens, no matter how you get hurt, mind is here for a baby body. And that discourse is a very powerful little tool, but it helps you then say, okay, we've reimagined ourselves, now we have an idea of what we want to do, let's go out in the world and play. And that's where this new crafted authenticity gets to take the slings and arrows of outrageous
That's
fortune.
why Andy's such a totem for
Yes,
this. Yeah.
exactly.
What do you think Andy's sort of conception was of love?
Andy was deeply wounded. I think developmentally his sense of self was very intertwined with his mother. She lived with him until she was 83, so mommy was always downstairs. And there's a little clip of a film that I saw once with his mother, and she says, Andy, you need to get a nice girl and get married, and all these guys were around. So it was quite funny. So yeah, he had this symbiotic connection with his mom. He had autistic spectrum disorder, probably genetically or maybe from the brain disease he had as a child. It's one of the sequelae. He fell in love, there's no doubt about that, but he didn't sustain long-term relationships after that first big broken heart in the 50s.
Do you think in the 21st century you almost have a bit of a life dysmorphia? Because if you think 80 years ago people couldn't have had a cold shower or whatnot,
right?
And yet we're living in, I think, a kind of age of mass anxiety in a way that we wouldn't have before.
Well, there's no doubt about that, and I do think Marshall McLuhan was on target when the smaller the global village and the more overpopulated, and we see this in rat populations, the more you have aberrant behavior. Everything from murder to you name it, a breakdown in the social fabric of mammals.
Do you have hope for the future?
I'm guarded and accepting whatever happens. I have faith in life. I look at the universe as a creativity machine. It took 13.4 billion years to get here, and we've only been here maybe for less than a billion. So we're a work in progress, and what we do have that I think nature is a genius in having done it, we have the ability to adapt to any environment more than any other species, and that's because of the brain. And there's recent paleo-evolutionary neuroscience that demonstrates that the human brain, in a particular part that involves the precuneus, expanded about 100,000 years ago. And shortly after that, the cave paintings, and language, and culture, and farming, and all this stuff came because of this ability to reflect and ask questions like, what am I? What does it all mean? And culture gets created, and narratives become more important, not just ritual behaviors. So I love living, and I love human beings, and I'm hopeful, but it is a dark, dangerous time, but it always has been. But it's just the village is smaller and there are more people.
Yeah. If there was one thing everyone in the room could do tomorrow to kind of kick off harnessing their creative intelligence a little more, what would it be?
Buy my book.
There you go. It would definitely help.
That's Andy Warhol speaking.